Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to another card making video. So today we're going to be looking at the newest release by Clearly Besotted. So this is the January release. So I purchased the bundle because you get a couple of free items in here. So the first thing you get is this patterned paper. So you get, I believe it's 6 sheets in here. They are double-sided and they're spotty. So you've got some bigger spots on the one side and then smaller spots on the other. Off the top of my head, I think these are about 6 by 6, and they are a really nice weight to them as well, so it's not like super thin cardstock or anything. So the next free item you get is a stencil. This is called My Sweetheart Stencil, and I had to edit some footage out because it took me an embarrassing amount of time to get this stencil out of the envelope. But you can see we've got this really beautiful stencil here, which we're going to use to create the background for our card today. The last free item you get by purchasing the bundle is this smaller stamp set. This is called Stupid Cupid, and this is then you've got some hippos dressed up as Cupid, and you've got a couple of sentiments in there as well, like love is in the air, give it your best shot, and Stupid Cupid. So that's a really cute little set that you get. But now let's take a look at the main sets that come in the bundle. So the first one we have is this Laugh Out Loud Love. So this is filled with sentiments, things like never go to bed angry, stay up and fight, and let's grow old and grumpy together. So I think there are some really great sentiments in there. Next up, we have Perfect Valentine. So you've got some cats in here with different sort of Valentine's themed items. And again, you've got some really great sentiments like I love you, but I hate Valentine's Day. Next up, we have this one. This is called No One Like You. So a really great gnome set. You've got a little bit of background stamped in there. And again, some really great gnome-themed sentiments. Next up, the one we're going to be using for today's card is Key to My Heart. So you've got some pigs, you've got what could be like a skunk, and you've got some bears in there as well with a key and a lock. Then we have the Cuddle Buddies. So those have got different critters cuddling together, and again, some really great sentiments in there. And then we have the Creating Chemistry. So this could be used for different occasions, not necessarily just Valentine's Day, but you've got sort of science-themed critters in there, and then you've got then sort of sentiments based around chemistry. So they are the stamp sets. So now let's get started actually creating our card. So to create our stenciled background, I've just taken a piece of, this is just stamping card, this is just some stuff that I found. It's like a smooth cardstock, and we're going to be doing some ink blending through the stencil with some Distress Oxide. So I'm going to use some washi tape just to hold this down. Because my cardstock is the same size as the stencil, I'm just going to fold it around the edges. So obviously we're going with the Valentine's Day sort of themes here. So I'm going to pick 2 pink Distress Oxides. So we're going to start with Spun Sugar, and we're also going to have Picked Raspberry. So I was going to do a gradient from sort of top to bottom, but I decided to do the Picked Raspberry in the middle as kind of a circle design, and then I wanted that to fade out into the Spun Sugar. So just going for something just a little bit different. So this is a really great quality stencil. It did clean up really nicely, and I did find then that the ink actually got through really well with the stencil as well. So you can see that I've just done a sort of slightly larger circle in the middle, but then I'm going to be overlapping that Picked Raspberry with then the Spun Sugar, and it's just, like I said, going to sort of fade out into the corners. So originally I was going to do something just a little bit smaller with the circle, but I really like how it turned out because we end up having a few bigger items. It means then you can see a little bit more of that Picked Raspberry colour. So once I finished ink blending this background, I'm just going to leave this to one side just to dry back a little bit, and we can get started then stamping our images and colouring in them with alcohol markers. I do find that using a stencil background like this is a really great way just to add a bit of interest to the background, but it's not going to be so overpowering that it takes the focus away from your stamped images. So I've taken a piece of stamping cardstock. So this is a smooth card. So this is great then for using these alcohol markers on. So I'm going to be using the little tree stamp from the No One Like You. And then I'm going to be taking a few of the stamps from the Key to My Heart stamp set. So that's the main one we're going to be using for today. So normally I do use my stamping platform, and actually for what I'm going to be doing here, it would have been a little bit quicker because I could have loaded all my stamps and stamped it all in one go. But instead I wanted to have a look and see how well it's stamped with an acrylic block. I do find with some of the cheaper stamps, you don't get a great impression. That's why I tend to use my stamping platform a lot more often. But it was really nice to see, you know, these weren't exactly cheap to purchase. I think they retail for around about sort of £10.50 a set. So it's really great to have great quality stamps for that kind of price. You don't mind paying it. Well, I don't mind paying it. And I always know a really great stamp set when I can stamp it just with an acrylic block and, like I said, get that really great impression that I want. Because I'm going to be using my alcohol markers, I am stamping this with the Memento Tuxedo Black because it's alcohol friendly, and I'm going to be using a mixture of a few Copic markers and then my Tri-Blend markers. So the stamps that I end up using from this Key to My Heart stamp set is I use that little bundle of balloons, but I don't actually end up using that on my final card. But the other images then that I stamped was the bears. So you have 3 different animals, and each of them, one of them has a key and the other has the lock, so they go together really nicely. So you could do the same animals, or you could then mix and match between them. So you have the bears that I'm using here, you've got little pigs, and then you've got little sort of raccoons, so something just slightly different. The last image I'm going to stamp is going to be this little hut. Then we can get started on our colouring. So this is the first time I've ever used Clearly Besotted stamps, and like I said before, I'm really impressed with the quality of these. I have seen them demonstrated lots on Instagram, I've seen them used on YouTube, and I decided to kind of take the plunge this time. So I did really love this release. I don't think it's just for Valentine's Day. You could definitely use this for anniversaries. You could probably stretch it to things like birthdays. With the Creating Chemistry set, you could definitely use those, you know, for anybody who's interested in science or anyone who's graduating, because there is a sentiment saying congratulations to the graduate, so it definitely could be used in lots of different sort of occasions. But for now, let's get into colouring these images. So I've super sped this up, otherwise we will be here for a while. So I'm using a combination of some Copic markers and then my Tri-Blend markers. So I did receive 2 new sets of Copics for Christmas. So I got a green trio set and I got a red set as well. So the reasons why I've gone for these colours is because they are the ones that I use the most in my Tri-Blends, but I'm starting to run out of 1 or 2 of the colours. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is slowly sort of replacing then my Tri-Blend markers, because I've said in previous videos, because you can't refill them, I'm not sure that I want to kind of reinvest in them, even though I do think they are really great pens. And then I'm going to slowly kind of try to build up the Copics with the colours that I do actually sort of use most of all. So you can see that I'm not doing anything sort of too fancy. I am just trying to do a little bit of shading in there. And I am then using the 3 colours, so whether it's the 3 colours of the Tri-Blend markers or if it's 3 colours of the Copics. So just trying to give it a little bit more depth and dimension, just to make the images a little bit more interesting. So I have fussy cut all of those images. So I would love to be able to get coordinating dies for these stamp sets, but unfortunately I don't think they do them. So I have just fussy cut them, but I definitely think when I get a little bit of space in my craft room, I'm going to be getting out my scanning cut machine, and I'm definitely going to be using the direct cut function on it to cut out then my stamped images. But for now, I've put those to one side, and I'm just going to prep then my background, and we can start to build up this card. So you can see that I've got my stamped stencil panel here, and you can see how it's really beautifully fading out into the lighter colour as it goes out towards the edges. And I've just cut that down. So we are going to be making a square 6x6 inch card. So I have trimmed down that stencil. Like I said, it was a 6x6 inch stencil. And then I've just matte and layered that onto some gold mirror cardstock, just to give it a little bit of shine. As a main focal point of the card, I wanted to have a big word. So I took out then one of these moonstone dies. So this actually says happy, and I did actually pick up the wrong one. So I do end up die cutting this, but then when I start putting the card together, I realised it wasn't the happy that I wanted. It was the love, but I don't have the packaging to that. But the packaging for these 2 are pretty much exactly the same. It's just then obviously the words are different. But I'm going to die cut this from some that same gold mirror card. So with these, you do have then that sort of top piece. of the word, which is sort of decorative, and then you have that shadow to go behind it. So the shadow I'm going to cut from some sort of clear vellum, and then, like I said, that's then going to go behind that really beautiful gold mirror card. But like I said, I don't end up using the happy, I do end up doing the exact same process with the word love. So just jumping forward, you can see that I've die cut this exactly the same like I just showed you with the happy. I'm going to use this dotty tape pen to help adhere the top love sentiment onto that vellum, just so you don't end up having the glue sort of go between those decorative pieces. And that's just going to sit really nicely onto that shadow die, and it's just going to help sort of emphasise that word a little bit, not having to make that stand out too much, but using that vellum, which is just going to kind of outline it really beautifully. So when we've got that stuck down, we can go ahead and start assembling our card. So you can see then that we have then this big love, and then we have then our stamped images as well. You can also see now as I start to assemble the pieces, decide where I want to put them. You can see why I've then done that stronger picked raspberry colour in the centre of my background, and then that's going to fade out into that lighter spun sugar, and I think that just works really beautifully with then sort of the design that we're going to go with. But I did have a little play around to see which of the images I wanted to use and the kind of placement, what did I want to have on foam tapes, and obviously when we're happy then you can start sticking them down. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop down our tree. So these are going to go in the background. They are slightly smaller in size to the hut that we've got. So when you're thinking about how you're going to lay out your card, you want to look at what's potentially going to be smaller and in the background further away, and what is bigger to be in the foreground. So then I'm just using some double-sided tape. I'm not really putting a lot on, to be honest. Obviously you can use lots of different adhesives here to pop these down. I just think double-sided tape works best. It's less messy than sort of glue. I don't always necessarily get on very well with things like liquid glue. So I've popped down my hut and then my first bear with the key, and these are all flat to the card. So the next thing I'm going to do is prop up then this love. So I'm just using some small square foam pads, and this is just going to give it some really nice dimension. And the idea is then that in the sort of starting in the top left hand corner, the images coming down are going to be sort of flat to the card, and then as it sort of comes to the bottom right hand side, they're going to be kind of lifted up on foam pads. So again, it's just to add a little bit of dimension and just a little bit of an interesting sort of look to the card. But we're going to pop the placement, so you can see that I'm popping that love just on top of the sort of bottom of the background images. I've done this just so they don't look like they're floating. It just kind of helps ground it a little bit. And it just sort of makes it sort of a little bit more pleasing to the eye, I personally think. So then with our bear that's got the lock, I'm just going to put some foam tape on the bottom, and then I've put the little bit of double-sided tape on the top. This is so then that top bit can stick to the section of the E, because it's up on foam, it needs to be supported at the bottom. So I can just go ahead and place that on. And so you can see, like I said, we're coming down to the right hand side, and it's just going to be up on dimensions just a little bit more. I definitely wanted to get one of the sentiments from this stamp set onto the card, so I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment "We Belong Together" onto some black cardstock, and I'm going to use some white embossing powder. So I just wanted to go back to a point I made earlier about the quality of these stamps. So as I said, I usually always use my stamping platform, especially if I am going to be doing some heat embossing with the Versamark ink. I want to make sure that I get a great impression, so I use the stamping platform so I can stamp it multiple times. But it just goes to show how confident I was in these stamps, because they are really great quality, they're proper stamps. And it meant then that I could stamp this once with an acrylic block, and I got a really great impression. So you can see that I've stamped that again in that Versamark clear ink. So you don't really see this until you maybe pop it into the light. You can kind of see where you've stamped, but really it's not until you pour that embossing powder onto it that you kind of really see it. You can see that I've heat set that with my heat gun, and it's turned out really beautifully. And now I'm just trimming it down I was going to have it just a little bit longer, but I felt like just the size of it didn't quite go, so I am just trimming it down. But I think this is a really beautiful sentiment, and it's just going to add something a little bit extra. So it's not going to match in with the love word, but it really goes nicely with the sort of theme of the cards. And again, I'm going to have that towards the bottom on some foam pads again, just to have that little bit of dimension. So it does look like there's quite a lot going on with this card, but I think it all comes together really nicely. You don't always necessarily have to have kind of a super busy card, maybe with a scene. You can just kind of put the images together, and if you get them just in the right place, I think you can make a really great card. But to finish this card off, I'm just going to add some of these embellishment drops. So if you've watched the last couple of videos I've talked about using the drops a little bit more, practicing with them. So obviously I've talked quite a lot about the placement and not really confident in where I'm putting them. And I definitely don't think I nailed it on this card. I think I put one too many. I really loved adding the black in there because it just helped that sentiment pop a little bit more. But again, it was that placement that I just didn't quite get. But I used some of the black, and then I used some of the clear as well. So the clear, again, you couldn't really obviously end up seeing because they are clear when they dry. But yeah, I think I'm definitely going to have to start practicing where I'm going to put those drops sort of in the future. So there might be something I need to do with that. But I just wanted to finish the card off a little bit, just to add a little bit of embellishment, something a little bit extra, just to sort of complete it. But overall, I'm really happy with how this card's come out. You can see that I have just popped that onto a blank white card base, and it's just got a really nice thick white border around it. So as I've done in the previous videos and I talked about it, I did then just tap this onto a raised surface just to help flatten them out. Not all of them flattened out, but it definitely helped with sort of the majority of them. So that is our card finished for today. So I've really enjoyed using the Clearly Besotted stamps. Like I said, this is the first time that I've used them, and I think the quality is really great, and they are just super cute. So we're definitely going to be creating a few more cards using the other stamp sets in this January bundle. But that's it for this video. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps to support my channel, and you can leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. So thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.